Hello everybody, I'm Evan Kamikow and this is The Toss-Up. Each week, join myself and an expert line panel dissect the latest sports news from some of the nation's most elite college programs here in Bloomington to the biggest stadiums and stages around the world. This week is tournament week for college basketball and we have a giant, monstrous, you could even say, panel. Stick around because we got a great show for you coming up on The Toss-Up. Coming up later in the show, our own Brett Smith will join us for Bracketology with Brett. Then our own Audrey Hausberger, the IDS's Amanda Foster, and the Hoosier Network's Gwen Parks are here to break down the women's tournament. But for now, our IUSTV Sports men's basketball beat reporter Jevan Mccoskey, from the Hoosier Network, their men's basketball beat reporter Zak Ibrahim, and from the IDS Tristan Jackson are in studio to break down the men's basketball season, NCAA tournament chances, and more. Guys, welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, thanks for having me. Let's talk some basketball.
All right, Zach, I want to start with you. Indiana, Michigan, the game coming up tomorrow. Who do you got and why?
You know, I had a tough time going back and forth. This is a game where Indiana wants revenge, and Michigan really took care of them in a circumstance where Indiana was coming off of, obviously, their best win of the season, coming off Purdue. So I don't think the circumstances were best for them to come out and beat Michigan. I think the circumstances change. I think Indiana gives themselves a chance to win this game, and they will. If they keep it in the 60s, I think they make it a defensive grind-out battle. I think Indiana's at least going to get to the second round of this Big Ten tournament.
And that would be really good for their tournament chances. Jevan, what about you?
I wish that I was as optimistic, but when
Don't we all?
Yeah, but when I look at this game, I don't see how Indiana's going to be able to stop Michigan from being within those 60 points, like you mentioned. I think if they do, then they do set themselves up for a great chance to win this game. But in my opinion, I just think Michigan's offensive firepower and Hunter Dickinson coming back and playing in this game is just going to add that much more to their offensive firepower, and they're not going to be able to be slowed down against this Indiana defense.
Tristan?
Yeah, I think it remains to be seen if, Hunter Dickinson is back at 100%, and I think that's really important here. He torched them from three-point range. But yeah, I actually am pretty optimistic. I think I think they'll want revenge. Their biggest loss of the season, 18 points. So yeah, I think they'll pull it out.
My thought process here is interesting because on one side you have this Indiana team who's gone through two really tough losses. On the other side you have this Michigan team who's hot right now, coming off a couple of wins, and you get your head coach back in Juwan Howard. Do I hope Indiana's going to win? I mean, yeah, I'd love to go cover second, semifinals and finals. Do I think they will? Nah, I don't think so. I'm going to take Michigan here. I think that just even having Hunter Dickinson on the floor, whether he's 100% or not 100%, is going to be too much for Indiana to handle unless, everything that we've talked about, the defensive screen switches, they make their shots. It's a really high hill to climb for this IU team, and I don't think they're going to get it done, unfortunately. But anything could happen. After all, it is March. So, Tristan, back to you. What does this team have to do now to go dancing?
To go dancing, probably need 2 wins to be comfortable. I think 1 win, it depends on the bubble around them. That's really going to be the deciding factor if they can get the win tomorrow.
And especially after a Wake Forest loss today, which is huge. Jevan?
Yeah, I think, like you said, 1 win gets them in the room, right? You'll be able to sit in Selection Sunday and see if your name gets called. 2 wins, you're comfortable. You will be going dancing. 1 win, you get in the room, like I said, but who knows if we will go and play. Like you mentioned, we need a lot of things to go right tomorrow. And if those things do go right, I do assume that we will be going dancing, or the Indiana team will be going dancing. But 2 wins makes you comfortable.
Zach?
These guys hit on it. 1 win puts you in the conversation. If the bubble around them pops, then they have a chance to really step in. And I wouldn't rule out playing Illinois at least close, and then people recognizing that after you play Purdue close at their house to close out the regular season, this Indiana team can at least compete with the best in the Big Ten, and I think the committee will recognize that.
So what if Indiana plays Michigan close and loses by 2 or 3? Is that good enough to potentially get them a play-in game, or do they need that win?
I can't say that because they blew you out on their home court, on Indiana's home court, and Hunter Dickinson, they couldn't guard him. So I think there's matchup problems in that game, even if Indiana plays them close. I don't think it'll be enough.
Jevan?
Yeah, I mean, and you mentioned how they beat us at Assembly Hall. We can't act like tomorrow's game isn't going to be a home atmosphere for Indiana as well. It's not going to be looked at as a home game, but it will be a home atmosphere. So Indiana's going to have that crowd behind them. But I do think that if you play them close, I don't think that's enough to get you into March Madness.
Yes, especially with the home atmosphere.
Yeah.
I mean, you had the advantage there. There's no excuse to lose and then expect to get into the tournament with 3 losses in a row.
Mm-hmm. All right, let's take a look. If you guys had a pick, because we've seen this IU roster from top to bottom, it's a pretty good roster. They have a lot of big names who have had moments and shined at some points. Who do you think, Jevan, will be that impact player for the IU team this March?
I think the go-to answer for this question is Xavier Johnson. While Trayce Jackson-Davis is our quote-unquote best player, I think Xavier Johnson is our most important player. I think this Indiana team goes as he does. When he's hot, this Indiana team can put up 75, 80 points a game. When he's not and he's struggling, turning the ball over, missing shots, that's when you really see this Indiana team struggle to put up any points whatsoever. And when we're forced to play through when Indiana is forced to play through Trayce Jackson-Davis, that's when the offense slows down and they begin to just become stagnant on offense.
Mm-hmm. Tristan?
I agree. It's got to be Xavier Johnson. I mean, you saw it. Mike Woodson called his last time out with 5 minutes left to get him back in the game. That's how important he is.
Yeah.
And then in terms of Big Ten tournament, I mean, he's going back to Gainbridge Fieldhouse after he got booed by his home fans there. I think that's something to keep an eye on, and I think he wants to show the IU fans there that, he's the real deal.
So you guys both have Xavier Johnson.
Yeah.
Zach, who do you have?
Yeah, he sets the pace, he sets the tone of the game, but I'm going to go out of the box and say Race Thompson. This is a guy who has had his best offensive stretch as an Indiana Hoosier closing out the end of the regular season. You could say he was more consistent than Trayce Jackson-Davis. I feel like he doesn't command a double team yet, and that gives him opportunities to score one-on-one on the block. I feel like Michigan might take Trayce Jackson-Davis away. They might not allow those driving lanes for Xavier Johnson. That leaves Race Thompson open. I'll say he's the impact player.
Well, impact players can be 2 players because, and Jevan and I have been harping on this all season, and everybody really has, and all of the work that we do is it's got to be, you need production. You need more than 9 combined points from Miller Kopp and Parker Stewart. Those are 2 guys that you brought in to be spot-up shooters. Parker, they've struggled. They've looked very lost on the court recently. Miller's finally finding his footing. I think, he had a good 14-point performance against Purdue, so hopefully he follows that up with another 10-plus point performance, but Parker Stewart, if you have the ball at the end of the game, you got to hit your shots. It's bottom line. So on that, though, I want to ask you guys, if this is a close game towards the end, Michigan, Indiana, who do you feel comfortable taking that last shot? Zach, I'm going to put you on the spot.
I think it'll be in the hands of Trayce Jackson-Davis, but he'll be put in position to make a decision and make a pass, and I think it'll be one of those guys. Parker Stewart, Miller Kopp, a shooter on the perimeter that spots up. It's going to be up to them.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean, you look at the scenarios that we've had where a player has been forced to take that last shot. Rob Finney's been the player. We've seen Parker Stewart be put in that position and come up short a couple of times, but in the last home game make the big shot right before Ron Harper Jr. came down and took the life out of Assembly Hall. I think there are a handful of players that it could be, but in my opinion, I'm going to go back to Xavier Johnson. He's playing his best basketball of the year, and why not keep the ball in his hands when the most important basket of the game is needed?
Tristan?
I'm going to say Miller Kopp. I think he's had the last couple games been his best stretch of basketball this season, and I think obviously Xavier Johnson and Trayce Jackson-Davis command a lot of attention. He hasn't really been forced to take that last shot, and I think teams seeing that on film, and I think that is the perfect opportunity to kick it to him and hit the last shot. So.
Yeah, and you guys all said it best. You'd love the ball to be in TJD's hands. That's somebody who I'd like to see him play, and he said it and Mike said it. You want to see him play with his face towards the basket instead of his back towards the basket a little bit more. Get him involved in that screen and roll, because we've seen what happens there when Xavier Johnson has the ball. Trayce sets a screen. They can dive together, draw a double team, and a lob. It's little things like that add up in the big grand scheme of things that I think will be really beneficial for Indiana. So that's what I'd like to see at the end of the game, a little pick and roll action instead of setting up an open 3 for Parker. Or Rob Finney did hit the shot against Purdue. Can't not mention his name as well. Got 2 questions before we let you guys go. First, how would you guys rate Mike Woodson's overall first season? What's your grade A to F? Zach, we'll start with you.
Obviously, the job is not done yet. They still have a chance to possibly make the tournament. I think things stand right now in 18-12 regular season. I can't give him more than a B. You had huge wins at home. You defended home court. Were undefeated there for a while until you really went through a gauntlet of Big Ten competition in February. I'm not going to fault Mike Woodson. He's done a great job with recruiting. He knows he's here for a long time to come, and he's trying to set the program up for success in a couple years, but I'll give him a solid B.
Solid B.
Yeah, I mean, we've all said from the beginning of the year, there's not really one thing that Mike Woodson has done negatively. From the very first day that he was here, he started to recruit well. He brought players back, and we saw for a long stretch where this Indiana team has played really good basketball. Now, I also agree with you. I don't think you can go higher than a B because while we have had big wins, there have also been some games where down the stretch, the play call or the playmaking and who has been in the game has been a little questionable. But that's not to say that it's not been a productive season for your first season as a head coach, especially at a place like Indiana University. So I would go as high as a B and as low as a C+.
And especially the transition from the NBA to college basketball. It's a big jump. And one of the things that's really interesting to me is his use of timeouts and how he, there are these stretches where it's the NBA mentality where you want to play through those stretches and have your players play through them. But that's not how it works in college basketball. You got to take the timeout. You got to try to stop momentum somehow. So I like your grade of a B. I'm going to go B+. I think it's been pretty successful. He's got, getting Jalen Hood-Schifino to come in for the class of 22 is huge for this program.
Gabe
so
Cupps.
I'll say Gabe Cupps in 2023. So big strides forward. Tristan, round it out for grades.
I'd say A-B+ range. I think I personally weigh heavier the recruiting challenges that he faced when he got here and his ability to, manage that in the face of, 6 guys being in the transfer portal. Obviously, there's been some, just really inexcusable losses, and that's why I can't put him higher. But, you look at this team last year compared to this year. The transition there, I think just it's blown me away, really. I think he's exceeded my expectations. So I'd give him an A-. All
right, last question before we let you guys go really quickly. Who do you got winning the Big Ten tournament? That's exactly what we're all going to cover this weekend. So who you got winning the whole thing? Jevan, we'll start with you.
I hate to say it, but I can't see a team other than Purdue going into this weekend and walking out the Big Ten champions with that trophy at the very end. We got to see them play in their last regular season game. Starting 5, 1 to 5, they are all elite. They are all good. Zach Edey gives everybody fits. If he's not having a good game, Travion Williams can come in and give someone fits. Jaden Ivey, of course, is one of the best players in the country, and I just can't see another team in the Big Ten stopping them.
Tristan, who do you got?
I got Illinois. I don't really think anyone. I don't think anyone can match up with them well in a tournament setting like that. I think Kofi has really good stamina for his size, and I think in a setting like that where you got to go and win 3 games in 3 days, I think that kind of plays to that. So
I'm going to take Wisconsin, Johnny Davis. Something about him, Brad Davison. They're the guys that you don't want to see win, but they're always there. So that's why I do.
We're at Indiana school, and it's almost hurts more to hear you say Wisconsin than it hurts for me to say Purdue. I'm going to be very honest.
I disagree because it hurts a lot more for you to say Purdue. Zach, round us out. Who do you got winning the Big Ten tournament?
The 2 teams these guys picked have size and shooting, and so it's tough for me to decipher between the 2. But I'm going to go with the team that's a bit more experienced. I'm going to go with the Purdue Boilermakers to win the Big Ten tournament.
Well, Zach, Jevan, Tristan, thank you so much for joining the show. Coming up after the break, we got a brand new panel coming on to talk all things IU women's basketball and their tournament hopes and bracketology with Brett. We'll be right back. Now at the free throw line is our own Brett Smith here for some bracketology in the new segment, Bracketology with Brett. Brett, over to you.
Thanks, Evan. The women's basketball season nears its close with the selection committee finalizing their field of 68 this Sunday. Indiana finished strong at the Big Ten tournament, winning 3 straight games before losing the championship to Iowa. The Hoosiers are projected to host 2 games in Assembly Hall and could possibly face some of the top teams in the country. Now let's take a look at Indiana's possible draw for the NCAA tournament. Indiana is projected to be a 4 seed in the Bridgeport region, with NC State being the number 1 seed in the bracket. Now, NC State is going to face off against Norfolk State or Longwood University, but in my opinion, I think NC State wins this handedly. I don't think either team can really compete with Alyssa Cunane or Diamond Johnson at the guard position, I think NC State wins handily. And then we have Central Florida versus Arkansas. This one's an absolute tough pick. It's an A9 matchup. If you're betting on this game, it's going to be really tough. I've got Arkansas winning personally, and I think they get through just because of their strength of schedule, and I think they really have a strong team that can get them through to the next round, the round of 32. And then next we have Oregon versus IUPUI. Now this one is a toss-up as well. I really want to go with the team that's just up in Indianapolis, but I have to go with Oregon. I feel like they're the more prepared team. I feel like they've done a great job in the Pac-12, and they had that huge win over UConn, which really set them well. And then we have Indiana versus Toledo at the 4 seed versus the 13 seed. I think Indiana's going to win this game no matter what. It's obviously going to change throughout this week with more tournaments going on, but I think Indiana wins it handedly. And then also, now we go back up to the top. Now we deal with NC State versus Arkansas. Now, NC State, I really think they're going to roll through these first 2 rounds. I really have NC State dominating. I think Elisa Cunane is one of the best post players in the country, and I really think she carries them, especially down low in the post, especially against a small Arkansas team. And then we have Indiana versus Oregon, and I think this is going to be a great matchup. High, fast-paced matchup, but I think Oregon does not match well at all with Indiana, with their size. Alexa Goulbe, Mackenzie Holmes, and even Nicole Cardona-Hillary. I think they overmatch Oregon, and they get to the Sweet 16. And then this is the rematch that everybody's been looking forward to. These two teams have faced off. NC State and Indiana have faced off. This is their 3rd time that they could possibly meet. They met last season in the Sweet 16, and Indiana pulled off one of the biggest upsets of the tournament. And I'm really looking forward to seeing Nicole Cardona-Hillary face off against Diamond Johnson. I think that's one of the most premier matchups of this tournament, and I really think that Indiana's going to pull it off, and they're going to get the upset win once again, repeating their upset from last season and move on to the Elite Eight, where they will face Tennessee. In my opinion, I think Tennessee gets back on top, gets back to their winning ways in women's basketball, and they end up winning. And I have Bloomington making it to the Final Four and ultimately winning the national championship, just like I said at the toss-up in the beginning. But that's all I've got for Bracketology. Back to you, Evan.
Thanks, Brett. I'm now joined by Audrey Hausberger from IUSTV Sports, Gwen Parks from the Hoosier Network, and Amanda Foster from the IDS. Ladies, thank you so much for being on the panel today.
Thanks for having us.
All right, Audrey, I want to start with you because I told you I was going to. What would be your grade for this IU women's basketball team so far this season?
Yeah, I was going back and forth between a B- and an A+, but I think I'm going to go with an A+. I loved the way they started off the season. They finally beat Maryland. That was so great to see. And I was also really impressed with their game at Purdue, just because, like, it doesn't matter what team you're facing. If you're a rivalry team and an away game, like, that's hard to beat for anybody. So, like, that was impressive to me. So they started off very strong. I took points off, obviously, because of the 3 losses at the end of their regular season, but gave them points back for making it to the championship game of the Big Ten tournament, but then again had to take points off because they lost to Iowa 3 times, which I can't imagine how frustrating that is for them and for the fans. So, A-.
A-. That's a pretty high grade. Gwen, is it that high?
I'm giving it A-. I thought that they were outstanding all season, and I honestly, from my opinion, thought that their only hiccup really was their 3 weeks off because of their COVID issues and losing Mackenzie Holmes for a little bit. And it took them a minute to refill, but like other than that, I was just thoroughly impressed all the way through to Big Ten tournament.
2 A-. Amanda, is it going to be a 3rd?
No, I'm gonna give them an A. Actually, we're going a little bit higher, make some waves, maybe. I don't know. But like Audrey said, they beat Maryland. They came out really strong in the beginning of the season. They beat Kentucky at home. You know, beating Purdue. You have all of these wins. Most of their losses too, they lost to teams that were at one point in the top 10 of the AP, the top of the Big Ten, the top of the country, like NC State. So they were really impressive losses for the most part if you look past Nebraska, because it was just a rough game overall. Like Gwen said, the COVID issues, Mackenzie Holmes being injured really put them in a rut because they didn't have time to really practice at all after they lost Mackenzie Holmes, which caused a lot of problems for them coming back. They lost to Michigan, and then they went kind of onto a skid in the end of the regular season. But then coming back into the Big Ten tournament, they looked like a brand new team, and that's where I'd move up from maybe a B+, A- into an A, because they looked like the team that they looked like in December when they were going on their win streak, when they looked like a cohesive unit that could do anything they wanted to. And so going forward into the NCAA tournament, I'm sticking with an A because of what I can see them doing.
So let's talk about the NCAA tournament. This team has been, before the Big Ten tournament, they were looking like a 5 seed, wouldn't even be hosting any games here in Bloomington. Now projections have them up to a 3. You guys know better than anyone else. Gwen, we'll start with you. What's your seed for this IU team?
We were talking about it a little bit earlier. I had them higher up. I said top 5, but I'm thinking more of like an 8 or 7, at least top 10. That's what I'm thinking.
Top 10, okay. Amanda?
So in the regional, either 3 or 4 seed. I could see with all of the upsets, and Kentucky beat South Carolina, which is crazy, and then Indiana has a win over Kentucky. So it's March, so go basketball. So that could bump them up to a 3 seed. 3 or 4 they're going to host. It's no doubt about it. Everyone's confident. Something would have to go really wrong with some selection. Overall, I'm going to go with probably, like Gwen said, like an 8 or a 9 seed. They were a 4 seed last year in the NCAA tournament. They had a fantastic season last year. It hasn't, I think, been quite up to par this season, but they've been good enough to definitely get in the top 10.
So you have them top 10 teams and the 3 to 4 range in the bracket. Audrey, what about you? What do you have in the bracket?
I'm going to agree with a seed of 9. I think when you look at the Big Ten Conference as a whole, it is some of the toughest athletes that you're going to face in women's basketball nowadays. And I think the conference is just so brutal, so aggressive, so challenging. And I think that when you look at the other teams that are going to be coming from other conferences, sometimes they just don't match up with the talent that the Big Ten has. So I think that's going to push them definitely into the top 10. And I think that their Big Ten run is going to help them get a better seed. But I do think them losing in the championship obviously is going to knock them back a little bit.
So we have them high up. Let's talk now, moving forward, about the actual team. What are some of the strengths of this team? What should people know at home going into the NCAA tournament? Amanda.
Oh my God, where do I start? Okay, so one thing that I will say that the coaches and the players have always talked about in almost every game, win or loss, is the preparation that they have, the scouting that they have on all the teams they face, where they have such good preparation. Their coaches do the research before they tell the players what they're going to do to guard, what they're going to do to attack and drive in. That gives them, I don't want to say a leg up, because obviously every team has this sort of preparation, but it seems like for Indiana that their preparation is kind of above the rest in the way that they're able to figure out how the other teams work, with the exception of maybe Iowa, and use that obviously very clearly to their advantage. I would also say, going along with that, their defense. Nobody plays like Nicole Cardano-Hillary does at all, ever. Like, you can drop it right there. And she's so hard to figure out, and everybody calls her a pest. She was called a gnat multiple times the Big Ten tournament by multiple players on different teams who didn't know that other people said that. And so she gives them a spark that no other team really has. Mackenzie Holmes coming back is a huge strength, because when she's at full capacity, she can do a lot for the team. But I would have to stick mainly with their defense and their scouting for what could really make them different from any other teams that they face.
Mm-hmm. And Gwen, I want to ask you a little bit about Mac. She just came back. She's been struggling a little bit. What have you seen that you like going into the tournament from Mackenzie Holmes specifically, and then you can get into the rest of the team?
I think that I really like that she has this mentality that she's ready to come back. I think it's going to be a little bit slow for her, but I mean, she really is an important part to this team, and I think that we're going to see her do some strides in the NCAA tournament, guys.
Mm-hmm. Audrey?
Same question about Mackenzie.
No, just in general.
Sorry, what was the question? There was 2 questions.
What do you think about this team? What are the biggest strengths of the Indiana team?
Okay. Yes. Sorry. There were just a lot going on in my head. I think one of their biggest strengths, something that they've also talked about a decent amount, is their bench depth. And I know Terry Morton has always harped on that. And she says that we always tell our girls that sit on the bench, it doesn't matter when your name is called, you better do something for the team. And I think that mentality has prepared kids like Chloe Moore McNeil, who came in the middle of the season having very few minutes in her time at Indiana. And you look at her now, she had great games all around in the Big Ten tournament. She looks so much more confident. She knows where to put the ball. Her herself is a testament to their bench depth, but you also saw someone like Ariel Wisney come in and get the block of her life in the Big Ten tournament. That's what Terry Morin called it. So I think that they just keep, the other bench players are watching other people get time, and the overall their bench is just really strong now.
So talked about strengths, yeah.
I just going along with the bench thing because in the beginning of the season they had no bench depth. It was the 5 starters playing 39, 40 minutes, and maybe Keandra Brown's going to come in and draw a charge and get a foul, whatever. So that, like you said, is a huge testament to how they've grown throughout the season and the fact that they can rely on Chloe Moore McNeil to come start. They can get Keandra Brown to come start if they need to, and know that they're going to put up points and they're going to do something that is incredibly meaningful for the team. So just, another little, they've grown so much throughout, and largely because of the way that their bench has developed.
So we've talked about the strengths. You got to look at the weaknesses too. There's weaknesses to every team. What can this IU team's downfall be in the tournament? Gwen.
I think that their downfall that could be the same as last year is inconsistent shooting and fatigue. I mean, that's what we saw last year in the Elite Eight against Arizona, and that's still the same thing I think that we could see carry over into this matchup.
Amanda?
Referees. No, I'm kidding, but maybe not. I don't know because the Big Ten, NCAA
There's
referees.
no Big Ten official. I don't think Big Ten.
But it's not just Big Ten. Maybe. Who
I
knows?
mean, look, something I was told when I was younger.
Yeah, you never know.
If you ever play sports, one of the big things that I grew up with someone telling me is all refs suck, but some are worse than others. So,
exactly.
So continue.
No, but for a serious answer, because I can't just say that. Going along with Gwen, it's the offense, whether or not they can hit their shots, because they played Nebraska, who they very well could have beaten, but they didn't hit their shots, and then they lost pretty badly. I think also if someone is able to figure out how to get around Nicole Cardano-Hillary, big problem. If a team can figure out how Indiana's defense is structured and somehow break through it, then they're gonna have to catch up, because they're not a huge offensive team. They don't score a lot. They prefer to keep their numbers lower. They don't want to go into the 90s. They don't want to run that hard for the whole 40 minutes of a game. So I think if a team is able to figure out how they play, obviously that's going to hurt any team. But I think for Indiana, who plays so uniquely, that if someone gets in there, then they're going to struggle with that.
Audrey?
Yeah, I would say to that point, I couldn't see any player figuring out how to stop Nicole from doing what she does personally, just because she doesn't do it all the time. So she kind of surprises you when she goes for the ball, and the only way to stop that is to not have the ball when she's on you, is because she'll just tap in there wherever she wants, and she can grab the ball a lot of the time. So I think no one can really figure her out in that aspect. But I think a weakness for them will be Mackenzie Holmes' mentality, just because any big player that comes off of an injury and has that pressure to get back to where they were is something that's just going to put the nerves in your brain, especially in a tournament. I think her confidence is getting better, but I can still see some hesitancy in her charging to the basket and her bodying other post players. And she's going to be facing the Cunanes, the Cesanos. She's going to be facing other big players that she's not used to, and I think her confidence is really going to set her back if her coaches don't
if her confidence isn't there.
Yeah.
All right, let's make.
Sorry, I'm cutting you off again. Going off of that, because we saw in the championship against Iowa that fouls kind of became a problem. That could be another big weakness if, depending on how the refs call the fouls in the game, depending on who they play, that fouls against players like Nicole Cardano-Hillary could potentially be an issue. We saw Grace Berger foul out. Mackenzie Holmes almost fouled out, who rarely ever gets called on fouls unless she's playing those big players like Sonano. So that could also be something to keep in mind going forward. It just depends on how the game goes out.
All right, let's wrap it up with some predictions. How far do you see this team going dancing, and what do you got? What are your predictions for this team's tournament run this year? Gwen, let's start with you.
I see them going far. I mean, I was very impressed by them in the Big Ten tournament. I mean, beating Maryland and Ohio State back-to-back, 3 games like that. I feel like that's just saying good things. That's just me. That's my big thing for me. I mean, they were 22-8 this whole season. I thought they were fantastic. So
you're going, what's your tournament run? Elite 8, Sweet 16, Final 4?
Well, of course I'm going to be oh my God, all the way. But I'm saying maybe around Elite 8 like last year. That's what I see.
Audrey.
Oh, this is a tough one. I think if they get to the Final 4, they will win all of it.
So you have them going all the way?
If they get to the Final 4. If they don't, I think they'll definitely get to the Sweet 16. I could see them losing in the Sweet 16, though. just because like I feel like sometimes they have really good shooting nights, sometimes they don't have good shooting nights, and if you don't have a good shooting night against a team that you're going to face in the Sweet 16, you're not going to make it to the Final Four.
Amanda, round us out.
I'm going all the way. I'm going to say Final Four. They're going to, I think, championship. If they make it to the championship, it's going to be a tough team to beat. Like you said, with bad shooting nights, I agree that, if you have one, you're out. But I think that the way this team plays in the tournament atmosphere specifically is so different from how they've played ever before throughout the regular season when they have had those off shooting nights, where Terry Moran said that they went into Indianapolis this past weekend and it felt like a new season. And they played like it was a new season. They played fantastically, and they didn't have an off shooting night. And so I don't see them having one in that environment, especially you start out hosting. As you keep going further in Sweet 16, Elite 8, Final Four, that environment just keeps growing. And so I don't think that is really going to be a concern for them. And I think their mentality, when they decide they want to win, they're going to 99%, like they're going to do whatever they can to win, and it's going to be really hard to stop them. And so all the way.
All the way. All right. Amanda, Gwen, Audrey, thank you so much for joining the panel. That's going to do it for the show this week. Be sure to continue the discussion and follow us on Instagram at IUSTV Sports and on Twitter at IUSTV Sports. With that, there's one thing left to do. I don't have a basketball today, so toss it up, find out if we'll catch it, and we'll see you after spring break.